a patch. The one thing that all Darktide players want, but the one thing that we will not be getting right now, at least. So if you clicked on this video thinking that you will get some information on a patch, unfortunately, there is no information. All Fat Shark Catfish, the new community manager, said on a bunch of Reddit posts is that a lot of what their efforts towards the current patches have done has started to pivot because they're now responding to community feedback. That is all the news you will find in this video. This is me mainly going to be talking about those posts on Reddit, as well as giving my 2 cents, my thoughts, whatever it is, about what's kind of going on currently with Fat Shark and the communication and the patches. So again, if that's all you wanted to know, you feel free to head on out. Before you do though, please don't forget to like, comment, and or subscribe. Each one of those things does help me out a ton. And also you can head on over to my Twitch, linked in the description and the pinned comment, twitch/ItalianSpartacus. I'm actually live streaming right now. I'm recording this live streaming to put up to talk about this because it's so frustrating. But if that's all you wanted to know, then like I said, you are free to shut the video down. But for those that want to get real into the nitty and gritty of this, let's keep going with the patch update news, quote unquote, of Warhammer 40k Darktide. So what we have here is the Reddit post, some Reddit posts, just that. So Catfish confirms that updates are delayed in part because devs have changed their plans for the game based on player feedback. So the question was something like, you know, hey, why are the community updates taking so long, so on and so forth. Sorry I missed this question before. There is a few reasons really. We are having to make some changes, but also the devs deserved a break. The launch period was tough for lots of staff as well. So vacations and such hasn't made it super easy to get everyone to talk at the same time. Oh my God, I almost threw up. But also the focus has been on changes and getting them signed off and feedback and trying to implement that as well as everything else. So it's been quite a bit longer than we wanted. So totally understand this standpoint, you know, game developers deserve a break after a launch. Totally agree with that. It is not an easy thing to launch a video game, and it is a rough thing to deal with the launch because you now have a video game that is exposed to that had a vacuumed amount of testing base, now is on a global testing base, right? With that being said, maybe don't have the launch butt up against a holiday that you know culturally as a Swedish developer, you take a considerable amount of time off for. I would say prepare for some sort of now, I'm not saying that this means that, hey, you know what? It's a holiday, no big deal. Everyone deserves to spend time with their family. You do. I'm just saying that if you know you're coming into a holiday, you know you're going to have a lot of things that are not going to hit in the intended time frame. Release something that says something like, hey, you know what? This just did not happen the way we wanted it to as far as the time constraints went. Here's what we're working on going forward, or whatever it is. To say like, hey, sorry, there have been a lot of vacations and a lot of holidays. I mean, yeah, I totally agree because that's what everyone's been dealing with. But the fact is that it's like the game is almost now 2 full months into launch with missing features that were promised to happen before the year's end. And now almost a full month into the year, we have not even an indication of when or if those features are coming by the end of the said month or in the beginning or middle or end of the next month. So I think that a lot of the player frustration does not come from the developers taking a well-deserved break. It comes from a lack of communication. And this is definitely not a Fat Shark Catfish issue. She came into this role right when the game launched, and they said, hey, you know what? Let's kind of put you on the back burner, let you learn some stuff, see how we communicate while Akshi and the other person whose name escapes me right now, kind of take the reins, and you kind of learn from there. And she kind of goes on to talk about how she had to deal with a 3-month notice, which is super common, especially if you're moving from European developers. They typically have multiple month notices outside of the United States. The United States is typically, hey, here's my 2 weeks notice, toodaloo. It's usually a negotiated process outside of the US, especially for game developers. It's a multiple month process. So if you did not know that, it's now worth noting it. So, Still a Nothing Burger comment, yeah, for sure. I hope to get more clarity in the community update and be a bit more consistent with communication going forward. And that's Catfish's response to that. And like, again, this is her recognizing that, yeah, you know, there is not a great communication platform set up. And she does go to talk about that a little bit further on. And no one, I think, is asking necessarily now at this point for content. I was like, what the hell's the word for it? No one's looking for content so much as an indication that content is coming. what's happened now with, and I made this joke to Smog I was talking to earlier. What's happened now is this has become the curse of 3 when it comes to Warhammer 40k games. Total War Warhammer 1 and 2, great games. Warhammer 3 is a really good game, and I absolutely love Warhammer 3, but it is suffering from a serious lack of communication issue. It feels like the game is dead. We don't really know where the game is going, but hopefully there's something big coming. Dawn of War 3, released, was not the most amazing game. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 because I actually really do enjoy it, but it had all the bones to be a spectacular game. It just needed about 6 more months of player feedback, alterations, more content added. It would have been an amazing game. That one failed. And now we're hitting Darktide, which is the third Tide game, not the third Warhammer 40k game, obviously, right? And we're hitting a lot of lack of communication and a lot of like this weird stagnation. And it is, again, we have to kind of consider the fact that we're coming from December into January. And if you work in a corporate environment, you know that the first half of January is like a null and void portion of the year. Like, you don't get anything done. You kind of just sit there and stare at the desk. You're like, what did I just go through the last month and a half? So that I understand, but to have that be under such a heavy public eye and have you go, well, okay, just simply talk to me. That's really what everyone's asking here. No one's sitting here saying, hey, this game is dead because we're not getting content. They're saying this game is dead because we're not getting communication on the content. And again, to Catfish's defense here, she's doing what she can in the role. Thank you. Hope you will communicate with us more than the other CMs. I am the CM for Darktide and will be so going forth. I was hoping to start before launch, but my previous role wouldn't budge on their 3-month notice period, so Akshay and Hedge, there you go, had to help cover Darktide for me until now. I imagine this was an incredibly busy period for them, as it was for all our staff post-launch. They're helping me learn everything so I don't drown in my first weeks here, and are doing a great job of making sure I don't take on too much at once. Then Starsberry says, you certainly make it feel more personal with comments like this, so good job. That's something good CMs do. It's relatable. And kind of jumping back down to her comment, I know I've come in with an awkward and difficult time, but hopefully it's only up from here. And this is where we kind of get into it's kind of like a bit of like a Reddit thing, right? Like, Reddit is very polarizing in that you are either extremely mad or extremely happy about things. There's very rarely an in-between. And it's usually people kind of trying to jump on a bandwagon of said types of stances on stuff. And it can be kind of frustrating because if you just want like purely the news or an indication of what's going on, you're like, okay, well, I don't need that opinion. But it's good you hope. I stopped hoping and stopped playing. I hope your bosses enjoy those $40. Good luck in your new role. I think we have a good base game. That fills me with hope that we can get it to where it needs to be. I hope we win you back at some point. A lot of people here agree with you. Have faint chances of hope for the game, so on and so forth. Catfish says, yeah, I've been reading the Reddit threads. So that's a really good indication, right? Like reading the Reddit threads and keeping an eye on the Discord before I officially started, so I knew somewhat of what the main feedback points are. We've been talking internally as well about the comms issue, amongst others, and I'm working for set processes to make sure we communicate more and more transparently. Then lastly, we have the fact that you're having to set up processes to fix communication issues is a massive red flag for how things are going internally. You'd think this was the first game they'd ever made judging by all this. Sorry, but I disagree. I'm coming into the role as a CM with previous experience into a new game and a new community. I, of course, want to lean into the experience I have gained from other roles and apply it here. Also, I have an outside perspective, which can be useful in a difficult spot. Ideally, I would have started at launch and put these ideas and processes into place then, but I could not negotiate my notice period, so I ended up starting quite a bit later than I had hoped. So, I guess like that's a really good point, that last one, hey, you know what, this is an indication of how things are going internally. And I don't really agree with that. I think Catfish coming from an outside perspective or an outside company is really good because up until this point, I don't think Fat Shark has had good communication. And someone can correct me if I'm wrong there because I didn't play Vermintide 2 a whole ton. I didn't get to interact with Akshay and see how Akshay responds to a lot of player feedback. And someone can, again, correct me there. You can say, hey, no, Akshay was an amazing CM and this is what they did to cover a lot of information. It just seems like it's a company-wide thing. Community managers, by and large, for a lot of different companies are usually on that front end dealing with a lot of these issues, so they have a lot of player interaction. But that doesn't necessarily, it can be a lot of movement and a lot of action, which is sometimes a bad thing, right? Seeing the CM talk a lot but with not a lot of patch follow through is, I'd rather just not see the CM then at that point. You know, it's like, okay, someone telling me, hey, it's going to get better, it's going to get better, and then it never gets better. It's not good. A CM that's present and we also get patches is amazing. So hopefully they can strike that kind of really cool balance and get that going. But I think the big problem is that there are so many people that love Darktide in what it could be or what the base game represents, and that myself included. If you love the game, that's great. If you don't like the game, that's awesome too. You just have to understand that some people are going to have a differing opinion of you. You just can't like rip each other apart like baboons. But I think the problem is that, again, this comes down to a lack of just simple communication and simply saying, I mean, had Catfish released a community update that said, hey, in the opening sentence, no patch coming tomorrow, anything like that, I just want to give you guys an appraisal of what's going on in the office. We have X percentage of people who have returned back from their vacations and whatnot with the holiday. Unfortunately, this is a culmination of X amount of years of producing this game, and people are taking a much deserved break. But our original intention was to hit these pain points, but you guys have mentioned that these are the bigger ones in by player feedback. So our patching process has now pivoted to hit those player feedback points stronger than the ones that we had originally intended because we wanted it to do. So if they had just simply said that and even don't give a date, right? The dates are always a trap, but just say like, that's what we're working on. That's what we want to get out to you. You can give a timeline. That'd be cool. But I think that just knowing that, oh, okay, the reason the patch isn't coming is because we've pivoted on what we wanted to release versus what you, the players, want. That's a good response, right? I mean, ultimately, we should want that as players, but not knowing it is very frustrating. And on top of it, wondering when that patch is coming and not hearing anything. And I mean, you guys who don't watch or read Reddit, you had no idea that this happened. And maybe you're like, man, are we going to ever hear anything? Are we ever going to hear anything? Are we going to hear anything? So I think the lack of official communication channels is really the bigger concern, because that means that we're not finding out exactly what's coming. And I mean, some of the stuff that really frustrates me, I think, too, is the crafting. Yes, I think we all can agree that if we just had crafting, the game wouldn't need new quote-unquote content as fast, because I could play and experiment with builds. I could be sitting here crafting and making different weapons the way I want to make them to see if this works the way I want to complete Damnation. Because right now, Damnation is not like a one and done thing. I've not gamed the system so hard now or have the best builds that I can sufficiently run Damnation with 100% success rate. You just never know what's going to happen with Damnation, so you might just die right out the gate because you got swarmed with shotgunners, disablers, and then a monstrosity. You don't know. And a lot of that kind of comes down to the fact that we cannot create a reliable level of damage mitigation for ourselves or damage output based on the blessing selections that we can put for our weapons, which are everything. So I think like just having base crafting and getting some of the patch notes that were quote unquote missed in the last patch, that would really just put things on a good level. Like, dude, if you were to do a hot fix and do, hey, here's the patch notes for the Thunderhammer that we missed, cool. I can now play around with the Thunderhammer in a whole different set of ways. I think that there's something to be said about large content drops, but I think there's also something to be said about minor balance updates that can happen in between content drops that can change the way the game plays or the way people respond to the game, which creates a little bit of a dialogue and it creates a fun bit of feedback and player gameplay loop changes. So all those things should be done. But hopefully we'll find out some more news. It's looking like we won't even have a community update this week. This being Tuesday, so that is kind of a frustrating little bit of information. Hopefully we'll get a community update then by the beginning of next week, and I would assume then a community update preludes a patch the day after. That's how they did it before, but there's no saying that that's going to be the format that they follow. Also, you know, we got a Vox transmission. This is the 17th, so 11 days ago. So you have to kind of juggle that too. Is like, okay, is that Vox transmission going to mean we're getting new content? Is that new content going to come with the next patch, or is that another next patch? What is that Vox transmission about? So I think that the big thing is that a lot of this delay has derailed the momentum the game built on its launch. And games rely on that launch momentum to really carry them into further portions of the game, DLC, so on and so forth. And the fact that Fat Shark has seemingly really fumbled that launch momentum is really rough. I'm hoping they can kind of rekindle that and keep it going. I mean, as it stands, the peak player count is, let's take a look here, Steam charts. And I know we're supposedly having another class come out for Vermintide. I mean, still the 24-hour peak is 12,000, which is comparatively very good if we're looking at the same trajectory that Vermintide had at this point in the game. So that's cool, but I still think though that, like, man, that peak player count could be massive right now had we received the game at least 20% more completed than it currently is. So hopefully we'll have more information coming out from Fat Shark on future patches with Darktide. I'm excited and hopeful for those patches. I'm not a very pessimistic person. If you came here hoping to get a bunch of negative, pessimistic points of view, I just don't have those. I don't have a bunch of negative hot takes. I usually stick on the positive side of things. You can find those negative hot takes plenty of places, but by and large, I think that Darktide will become an amazing game. Will it take a year? Will it take 6 months? Will it take a month or two? I don't know. I think, like I've said, just putting in the base stuff that the game was supposed to have launched with will push the game so much higher in its quality presentation that will be absolutely huge. So I can't wait till we get to that point at the very least. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that fun action, but have a good one and take care.